The wind howled through the skeletal trees, a mournful dirge echoing across the desolate landscape. Imagine a place nestled deep within forgotten valleys, where time itself seemed to pause. A place known as Willow Creek. But Willow Creek, as we know it, is no longer. It vanished. Utterly, completely, and without a trace. Today, we embark on a journey into the heart of this enigma, to peel back the layers of dust and time, and perhaps, just perhaps, understand what truly happened to the Eerie village that vanished. If you're as captivated by unsolved mysteries as we are, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Our story begins not with a bang, but with a whisper carried on the wind, a chilling tale passed down through generations in the neighboring town of Oakhaven. They spoke of Willow Creek, a small, self-sufficient community, thriving in its isolation. No roads led directly to it, only winding, barely discernible, paths through dense forest and treacherous ravines. This geographical seclusion, while offering a sense of peace and independence, would ultimately become a crucial and terrifying factor in its disappearance. For decades, Willow Creek existed in a state of quiet prosperity, its inhabitants living simple lives connected to the land and to each other. They were farmers, weavers, carpenters, the salt of the earth, as the Oakhaven elders described them. The earliest verifiable accounts of Willow Creek date back to the late 1700s, when a group of hardy pioneers seeking refuge from the growing urban sprawl carved out their existence in this secluded valley. They built their homes from sturdy timber, tilled the fertile soil, and established a small, close-knit society. Their numbers never swelled dramatically, maintaining a population of roughly 150 to 200 souls at its peak. Life was hard, but it was their own. They traded sparingly with Oakhaven, mostly for essentials they couldn't produce themselves, like salt and certain tools. These rare interactions were the only external contact Willow Creek had, making its sudden absence all the more perplexing. The first hint of trouble, retrospectively, emerged in the spring of 1886. A trapper from Oakhaven named Silas Blackwood, a man known for his stoic demeanor and keen observational skills, ventured deeper into the Willow Creek territory than usual. His intention was to trade furs for some of Willow Creek's renowned hand-spun wool. Silas always followed the same winding path, a route he knew intimately. Yet, on this particular trip, something felt off. The usual sounds of the forest, the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, seemed muted, almost absent. A strange stillness hung in the air, a silence that felt heavier than usual. As he neared the edge of the clearing where Willow Creek lay, Silas expected to see the familiar plume of smoke from the communal hearth, hear the distant laughter of children, or the rhythmic clang of the blacksmith's hammer. Instead, there was nothing. An unsettling quiet. He pressed on, his unease growing with each step. When he finally broke through the tree line, what he saw, or rather, what he didn't see, sent a chill down his spine that he would carry for the rest of his days. The village was there, physically. The wooden houses stood, the church steeple pointed skyward, the fields lay tilled. But it was utterly, profoundly empty. No people, no animals, not a single soul. The doors of the homes stood ajar, some swinging gently in the breeze. A half-eaten meal lay on a table in one house, a child's toy abandoned in the dirt outside another. The blacksmith's forge was cold, its tools neatly arranged. It was as if everyone had simply stepped away for a moment and then never returned. Silas, a man of logic and practicality, searched frantically. He called out, his voice swallowed by the unnatural silence. He checked every house, every barn, every corner of the small village. Nothing. Not a footprint, not a discarded garment, nothing to suggest a struggle or a planned departure. The only things missing were the people themselves. Silas, shaken to his core, returned to Oakhaven with his terrifying account. The townsfolk, initially skeptical, were eventually swayed by the sheer terror in Silas's eyes. a terror that hadn't been there before. A small search party was organized, consisting of 5 men, including Silas, and the Oak Haven sheriff, Bartholomew Bart Finch. Bart was a no-nonsense man, grounded in reality, and he approached Silas's story with a healthy dose of skepticism. He believed it was likely a mass migration, perhaps due to a local drought or disease, though Silas insisted there were no signs of either. The search party followed Silas's path, their apprehension growing with every silent mile. They confirmed Silas's account. Willow Creek was indeed deserted. The scene was precisely as Silas had described, an abandoned tableau, frozen in time. Sheriff Finch meticulously documented everything. He noted the absence of any signs of struggle, no overturned furniture, no broken windows. The livestock, cows, chickens, and pigs, were gone. This detail intrigued Finch. If the villagers had fled in haste, why would they take their animals? Or if they had been taken by force, how could such a large number of people and animals disappear without leaving a single trace of conflict? The search party spent 3 days, scouring the surrounding wilderness. They found nothing. No tracks leading away from the village, no abandoned possessions, no evidence of a disaster. It was as if the earth had simply swallowed Willow Creek and its inhabitants whole. The mystery deepened with each fruitless search. Sheriff Finch, a man who prided himself on solving every case, was baffled. He sent reports to the nearest provincial authorities, but the remote location and the lack of any concrete evidence meant little official action was taken. Willow Creek became a local legend, a chilling cautionary tale whispered around Oak Haven's firesides. Over the next few decades, Willow Creek remained a ghost town. Adventurous teenagers from Oak Haven would occasionally dare each other to visit, returning with tales of eerie silence and an oppressive feeling of being watched. No one ever stayed long. The village became overgrown, slowly reclaimed by the forest. The wooden structures began to decay, crumbling under the relentless march of time. Yet the mystery never faded. What truly happened? Was it a mass exodus, a cult disappearance, or something far more sinister, something beyond human comprehension? Decades turned into a century. The story of Willow Creek was largely forgotten by the outside world, relegated to obscure historical archives and Oak Haven folklore. Then, in the late 1980s, a team of amateur historians and paranormal investigators, led by Dr. Evelyn Reed, a tenacious and brilliant anthropologist, stumbled upon Sheriff Finch's archived reports. Dr. Reed, fascinated by historical anomalies, was immediately drawn to the enigma of Willow Creek. She saw not just a ghost story, but a historical puzzle waiting to be solved. Dr. Reed assembled a small team, including a cartographer, a forensic anthropologist, and a local Oak Haven guide, a descendant of Silas Blackwood named Thomas. Thomas, though initially skeptical of their academic approach to what he considered a local legend, possessed an intimate knowledge of the surrounding terrain, a knowledge passed down through his family. Their expedition to Willow Creek was meticulously planned. They brought modern equipment, ground-penetrating radar, drones for aerial mapping, and sophisticated photographic gear. Their goal was to find answers, to bring scientific rigor to a century-old mystery. Upon reaching the site, Dr. Reed and her team were struck by the same eerie silence that had unnerved Silas Blackwood. The remnants of Willow Creek were barely visible beneath a thick canopy of trees and dense undergrowth. Yet the skeletal remains of the building still stood, silent sentinels to a forgotten tragedy. Their first order of business was to establish a grid system for systematic excavation and documentation. They began with the largest structure, the old church, its steeple long since collapsed, its wooden walls rotting. Inside the church, they found nothing out of the ordinary: decaying pews, a collapsed altar, and a thick layer of dust. However, beneath a loose floorboard near the altar, Dr. Reed discovered a small, leather-bound journal. Its pages were brittle, the ink faded, but still legible. It was the diary of Reverend Thorne, Willow Creek's spiritual leader. The journal entries spanned several years, detailing the daily lives of the villagers, their joys, their struggles, and their unwavering faith. The last entry was dated April 12, 1886, just days before Silas Blackwood's fateful visit. Reverend Thorne's final entry was chilling. It spoke of the creeping dread, a pervasive sense of unease that had settled over the village. He mentioned strange occurrences, animals behaving erratically, crops failing inexplicably, and a whispering wind that seemed to carry voices though no one was near. He wrote, "A darkness approaches not of this world, but from beyond the veil. Our faith is tested. May God have mercy on our souls." The entry ended abruptly, mid-sentence. The ink, smudged as if the writer had been interrupted or had dropped the pen in haste. The discovery of the journal electrified the team. It provided a crucial timeline and a terrifying glimpse into the villagers' final days, corroborating Silas Blackwood's account of the strange atmosphere. But it offered no concrete explanation for their disappearance. What was this creeping dread? What darkness did Reverend Thorne refer to? Dr. Reed theorized it could be a psychological phenomenon, a mass hysteria, or perhaps a localized environmental factor that affected their perceptions. Their next significant discovery came from the cartographer, who, while mapping the area with drone imagery, noticed an unusual anomaly. A perfectly circular depression, roughly 50 feet in diameter, situated deep within the forest about a mile from the village. It wasn't a natural formation. The edges were too precise, the vegetation within it stunted and discolored. Dr. Reed immediately directed her team to investigate. The depression was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The soil within it was strangely compacted, almost petrified. The ground-penetrating radar revealed no large underground structures, but it did detect unusual energy signatures emanating from the center. The air around the depression felt heavy, cold, even on a warm day. Thomas, their local guide, refused to step inside the circle, claiming it felt unclean. He spoke of old Oakhaven legends, stories of the Hollow, places where the veil between worlds was thin. Dr. Reed, while respecting his cultural beliefs, sought a scientific explanation. Forensic anthropologist Dr. Anya Sharma began taking soil samples and analyzing the stunted vegetation. Her findings were perplexing. The soil showed no unusual chemical composition, no signs of toxic spills or radiation. Yet the plants within the circle exhibited severe cellular damage, as if they had been subjected to an intense, localized energy field. It was as if life itself struggled to thrive within that contained space. As they continued their meticulous investigation, Dr. Reed's team began to piece together a fragmented, terrifying narrative. They discovered that the villagers of Willow Creek had, in the weeks leading up to their disappearance, become increasingly isolated. Reverend Thorne's journal mentioned a self-imposed quarantine, a fear of the creeping dread spreading. They stopped their trips to Oakhaven, even for essential supplies. This explained the lack of external contact and the sudden cessation of trade. One of the most disturbing findings came from the remains of the village well. The water, when analyzed, showed no signs of contamination. However, etched into the stone lining of the well, barely visible beneath layers of moss, were crude symbols. Symbols that did not correspond to any known language or cultural iconography. They appeared to be hastily carved, almost frantic. Dr. Reed recognized some faint similarities to very ancient pre-human pictographs she had studied in obscure anthropological texts, but the connection is tenuous at best. The team spent weeks at Willow Creek, working tirelessly, battling the elements and the pervasive sense of unease that seemed to cling to the very air. They found no human remains, no mass graves, no evidence of violence or struggle. It was as if the villagers had simply walked away or been lifted away, leaving everything behind. The only tangible evidence of their presence was their abandoned homes, their tools, and the chilling journal of Reverend Thorne. The circular depression, however, continued to be a focal point of their investigation. Dr. Reed hypothesized that it might be connected to the villagers' disappearance. Could it be a point of origin for whatever force had afflicted Willow Creek? Or perhaps a destination? The unusual energy signatures persisted, a low hum detected by their instruments, almost imperceptible to the human ear. One evening, as dusk settled over the desolate valley, Dr. Reed was reviewing the drone footage of the circular depression. She noticed something she hadn't seen before. A subtle distortion in the air directly above the center of the circle, a shimmering effect, almost like heat haze but more pronounced and localized. It was fleeting, appearing only for a few seconds in certain light conditions. She replayed the footage, zooming in, enhancing the image. It was undeniably there, a ripple in reality itself. This discovery sent a jolt through Dr. Reed. Could this be a localized atmospheric phenomenon, or something else entirely? She remembered Thomas's tales of hollow places and the thin veil between worlds. While she was a scientist, she couldn't ignore the accumulating evidence of the inexplicable. The abandoned village, the Reverend's cryptic journal, the strange symbols, the anomalous depression, and now, this shimmering distortion. The team decided to conduct a controlled experiment at the circular depression. They set up motion-activated cameras, thermal sensors, and sound recorders around the perimeter. They left them running for several nights, hoping to capture any activity. For 2 nights, there was nothing. Just the sounds of the forest, the wind, and the occasional nocturnal animal. On the 3rd night, however, their equipment captured something extraordinary. The thermal sensors registered a sudden, dramatic drop in temperature within the circle, far below ambient levels. Simultaneously, the sound recorders picked up a low-frequency hum, a resonant vibration that seemed to emanate from the ground itself. Then, the motion-activated cameras flashed, capturing a series of images. The shimmering distortion above the center of the circle intensified, becoming more opaque, almost like a swirling vortex of energy. And then, for a brief, terrifying moment, a silhouette appeared within the distortion. It was indistinct, humanoid in shape, but elongated, almost stretched. It remained for only a fraction of a second before vanishing, and then the distortion, the temperature drop, and the hum all ceased. Dr. Reed and her team reviewed the footage in stunned silence. What they had captured defied all scientific explanation. It wasn't a trick of light, not an animal, not a natural phenomenon. It was something other. The silhouette, the energy, the localized temporal anomalies. It pointed to a conclusion that was difficult to accept, even for a seasoned investigator, like Dr. Reed. Returning to Reverend Thorne's journal, Dr. Reed reread the final entry, this time with a new perspective. A darkness approaches, not of this world, but from beyond the veil. Was he describing a literal phenomenon, a gateway to another dimension or another plane of existence? The strange symbols in the well, the unusual energy signatures, the peculiar atmospheric distortion, it all began to coalesce into a terrifying, yet plausible theory. Dr. Reed proposed that the circular depression was not just a natural anomaly, but a localized temporal or dimensional rift, a weak point in the fabric of reality. For reasons unknown, this rift had become active in the spring of 1886. The creeping dread Reverend Thorne described could have been the subtle yet pervasive influence of this emerging phenomenon, causing psychological distress, erratic animal behavior, and even affecting the crops. The villagers, perhaps sensing an impending, incomprehensible event, had retreated into their homes, or perhaps in a desperate attempt to escape, had been drawn towards the source of the disturbance. The most chilling aspect of this theory was the complete absence of human remains. If the villagers had been drawn into a temporal or dimensional rift, they wouldn't have left behind bodies. They would have simply ceased to be in this reality. The livestock, too, would have been taken, explaining their disappearance. The half-eaten meals, the abandoned toys, the cold forge, all suggested an instantaneous, unexpected event, leaving no time for goodbyes or preparations. Dr. Reed's team continued to monitor the circular depression. They never witnessed another full manifestation like the one caught on camera, But the anomalous energy signatures persisted, albeit at a lower intensity. It suggested the rift was still present, perhaps dormant, waiting for another activation. The case of Willow Creek remains officially unsolved by most historical standards. Dr. Reed's findings, while compelling, are often met with skepticism by mainstream academics who demand more concrete, verifiable evidence. Yet, the evidence she painstakingly gathered, the journal, the scientific data from the Depression, the photographic and thermal anomalies present a powerful, albeit unsettling narrative. Willow Creek stands as a testament to the unknown, a chilling reminder that there are forces at play in our world that defy our current understanding. The Eerie village that vanished did not simply disappear. Its inhabitants were perhaps ushered into a realm beyond our perception, leaving behind only questions and the lingering echo of a profound, inexplicable mystery. The truth, like the shimmering distortion above the circular depression, remains just out of reach. A tantalizing glimpse into the vast, terrifying possibilities that lie beyond the veil of our known reality. And as we conclude our investigation into Willow Creek, we're left to ponder. What other secrets does our world hold waiting to be uncovered? If this deep dive into the unknown has sparked your curiosity, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. We have many more mysteries to explore, and you won't want to miss a single one. Join our community of mystery solvers, and let's unravel the world's most perplexing enigmas together. The lingering questions from Willow Creek, however, refuse to be confined to academic debates or speculative forums. For Dr. Silas Thorne, a theoretical physicist specializing in quantum entanglement and multidimensional physics, the Willow Creek anomaly wasn't just a historical curiosity. It was a potential gateway. Thorne had been tracking Reed's work for years, a quiet admirer from a distance, recognizing the profound implications of her meticulous, albeit unconventional research. He saw in Willow Creek not a disappearance, but a transition, a shift in vibrational frequency, a momentary alignment with an adjacent reality. Thorne's own research, often dismissed as fringe science by his peers, explored the concept of brain worlds, the idea that our universe is just one of many brains floating in a higher dimensional space, occasionally brushing against each other, creating fleeting windows of interaction. He posited that these interactions, though rare, could manifest as sudden, localized distortions in space-time, phenomena that might explain everything from ghost sightings to inexplicable disappearances. Willow Creek, with its circular depression and anomalous energy signatures, fit his theoretical model almost perfectly. He reached out to Dr. Reed, initially through academic channels, then more directly, bypassing the cautious gatekeepers of conventional science. Reed, initially wary of another academic trying to co-opt her work, was intrigued by Thorne's genuine curiosity and his refreshingly open-minded approach. Unlike others who sought to debunk or dismiss, Thorne wanted to understand, to build upon. Their first meeting was a whirlwind of shared theories, late-night discussions, and a mutual recognition of kindred spirits. Thorne brought to the table sophisticated theoretical frameworks and advanced computational models that Reed, a field archaeologist and anthropologist by training, lacked. Reed, in turn, provided Thorne with invaluable empirical data, the raw, unfiltered observations from Willow Creek that grounded his abstract theories in tangible reality. Together, they formed an unlikely yet powerful alliance. Their collaborative efforts began with a renewed focus on the circular depression. Thorne hypothesized that the depression wasn't merely a scar left by the event, but rather a residual anchor point, a weakened spot in the fabric of space-time where the interdimensional breach had occurred. He believed that by carefully studying the energy signatures emanating from this anchor, they might be able to detect subtle fluctuations, predict future activations, or even, daringly, attempt to stabilize or reopen the rift. Thorne's team deployed an array of specialized sensors around the depression, far more sensitive than anything Reed had previously used. These sensors measured not just electromagnetic fields but also gravitational anomalies, quantum fluctuations, and even subtle changes in the local neutrino flux. They were looking for patterns, for the fingerprint of an interdimensional event. Weeks turned into months of painstaking data collection. The energy signatures, while still present, remained frustratingly low, almost imperceptible. It was like listening for a whisper in a hurricane. Thorne, however, was patient. He understood that these phenomena operated on timescales and principles far removed from human comprehension. Then, one stormy night, an alarm blared in their mobile research lab. The sensors detected a sudden, sharp spike in quantum entanglement readings emanating from the depression. Simultaneously, the gravitational anomaly detectors registered a minute but distinct fluctuation. It was faint, almost statistical noise, but Thorne's trained eye immediately recognized the pattern. "It's happening again," he breathed, his voice barely a whisper, a mixture of awe and trepidation. Reed, who had been reviewing historical climate data, snapped to attention. "What is it? A full manifestation?" Thorne shook his head, his gaze fixed on the flickering data streams. "No, not a full manifestation. Not yet. But it's a precursor. A ripple. The fabric is thinning." They scrambled into their specialized environmental suits, designed to protect against unforeseen energetic discharges, and headed out into the driving rain. The circular depression, illuminated by the flashing lightning, seemed to pulse with an ethereal glow. The air crackled with an unseen energy, raising the hairs on their arms. As they approached, the air grew heavy, almost viscous. The metallic tang of ozone filled their nostrils. The grass around the depression, usually damp and pliant, now stood rigid, coated in a delicate layer of frost despite the warm summer storm. Thorne deployed a portable spectrographic analyzer. The device immediately registered anomalous energy readings across multiple spectra, far beyond anything they had observed before. "Look at this, Eris," he said, pointing to a holographic display. "Gamma-ray bursts, ultra-low frequency radio waves, even some exotic particle emissions. This isn't natural." Reed, her eyes scanning the familiar landscape, noticed something else. The trees surrounding the depression, ancient oaks that had stood for centuries, were subtly shifting. Their leaves, usually a vibrant green, now shimmered with an unnatural, almost metallic sheen. The rain, instead of falling directly to the ground, seemed to hesitate, forming miniature, swirling vortices around each leaf, as if caught in an invisible current. "The flora is reacting," she observed, her voice hushed. "It's like the plants are trying to adapt to a new environment, or perhaps they're being influenced by an external force." Suddenly, a faint, almost imperceptible hum vibrated through the ground. It wasn't a sound heard with the ears, but felt in the bones, a deep resonant frequency that seemed to bypass the auditory system entirely. The air shimmered, not with heat, but with a distortion, a subtle wavering that made the surrounding landscape appear to breathe. "The vibrational frequency is increasing," Thorne announced, his voice tight with excitement. "We're nearing a resonant state. This is what happened before the full displacement. The world of Willow Creek was vibrating at a different frequency, out of sync with our own." He adjusted a dial on a complex device attached to his suit. "I'm attempting to measure the phase shift. If my calculations are correct, the difference in vibrational frequency between our reality and the one Willow Creek transitioned to should be quantifiable." The device whirred, its internal components glowing with an eerie blue light. A digital readout flickered erratically before stabilizing on a series of complex numbers. "Remarkable," Thorne whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. "The phase shift is precisely within the parameters I predicted for a brain-world interaction. It's like finding the exact chemical composition of the air a fish breathes after it's been pulled out of water." Reed, ever the pragmatist, brought them back to the immediate danger. "What does this mean for us, Eris? Are we at risk of being pulled in?" Thorne quickly checked his readings. "Not yet. The energy levels aren't high enough for a full-scale displacement. But it's a warning, a pre-manifestation event. It suggests that the conditions that led to Willow Creek's disappearance are still present, still active, like a wound that never fully healed. He then pointed to a specific point within the circular depression, where the shimmering distortion was most pronounced. Look there. The distortion is intensifying. It's a localized thinning of the dimensional barrier, a miniature ephemeral rift. As they watched, a fleeting image flickered within the distortion. It was indistinct, like a reflection in rippling water, but both Reed and Thorne caught a glimpse of something undeniably alien. A landscape, bathed in an unfamiliar light, with towering crystalline structures that seemed to defy the laws of physics. For a fraction of a second, they saw a sky of swirling, iridescent colors, unlike any they had ever witnessed. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it vanished, leaving behind only the shimmering air and the persistent hum. Thorne let out a long, slow breath. We just witnessed a glimpse of the other side, a temporary window into the reality where Willow Creek now resides. Reed felt a chill despite the humid air. The sheer implications of what they had just seen were staggering. It wasn't just a village that had vanished. It was a village that had moved, transitioned to an entirely different plane of existence. The inhabitants weren't dead, not in the conventional sense. They were simply elsewhere. The people, Reed murmured, her thoughts racing. What would it be like for them to suddenly find themselves in a world like that? Thorne considered this. It would be an unimaginable shock, of course, but perhaps over time, adaptation. If the new environment is stable and provides resources, life finds a way. Or perhaps the transition itself involved a fundamental shift in their perception, allowing them to integrate more readily. He paused, a new thought forming. Consider the concept of parallel evolution. If the conditions in that other reality are somewhat analogous to Earth, perhaps life there has evolved in similar yet distinct ways. What we saw, those crystalline structures, could be their version of cities, built by intelligent beings. The storm began to recede, the lightning, flashes growing more distant. The hum slowly faded and the shimmering distortion over the depression gradually dissipated. The frost on the grass around the depression melted, leaving behind only damp earth. The trees' leaves returned to their natural green. The world seemed to settle back into its familiar rhythm, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But for Reed and Thorne, everything had changed. They had moved beyond speculation and into direct observation. They had seen the veil part, if only for a fleeting moment. The incident galvanized their research. Thorne became even more convinced that the key lay in understanding the precise conditions that allowed these interdimensional breaches to occur. He theorized that certain cosmic alignments, combined with specific localized geological conditions, might create a perfect storm, a resonance frequency that temporarily weakens the dimensional barriers. Reed, meanwhile, turned her attention back to the historical record, but with a new lens. She began searching for other historical accounts of inexplicable disappearances, particularly those associated with unusual weather patterns or geological anomalies. She pored over ancient texts, folklore, and obscure local histories, looking for parallels to Willow Creek. Her research uncovered several intriguing cases. There were accounts from ancient Celtic myths of villages vanishing into the fairy realm during mists or solstices. There were legends from indigenous American tribes of entire settlements being swallowed by the earth during strange atmospheric events. While these accounts were often dismissed as superstition, Reed now saw them as potential echoes of similar interdimensional transitions. One particular case, documented in a series of obscure 19th century newspaper clippings from the American Midwest, caught her attention. A small frontier settlement, Prosperity Creek, was reported to have vanished overnight in 1888, leaving behind similar clues to Willow Creek, half-eaten meals, abandoned tools, and a strange, localized atmospheric disturbance described as a shimmering heat haze, despite the cold weather. The newspaper accounts also mentioned a peculiar circular depression that appeared in the center of the vanished town, eerily similar to the one at Willow Creek. Reed presented her findings to Thorne. This isn't an isolated incident, Eris. Willow Creek is just one data point in a much larger global phenomenon. These disappearances are not isolated events. They are manifestations of a fundamental, albeit rare, aspect of reality. Thorne was electrified. If we can find enough of these anchor points, enough of these residual depressions, we might be able to map the fault lines of reality, the areas where the dimensional barriers are naturally weaker. Their focus shifted from merely observing Willow Creek to actively searching for other potential transition sites. They developed satellite imagery analysis algorithms designed to detect subtle, long-lasting geological anomalies like the circular depression, even if they were overgrown or obscured by time. They cross-referenced these satellite findings with historical meteorological data and seismic activity records. Their efforts yielded a surprising number of potential sites. Most were in remote, uninhabited areas, suggesting that human presence wasn't a prerequisite for these events. However, a handful of sites showed signs of past human habitation, offering tantalizing, albeit unconfirmed, parallels to Willow Creek and Prosperity Creek. One such site, deep within the Amazon rainforest, presented a unique challenge. Satellite imagery revealed a perfectly circular clearing, approximately 200 meters in diameter, surrounded by dense jungle. Within the clearing, faint geometric patterns were discernible, suggesting ancient, perhaps pre-Columbian, architecture. Local indigenous legends spoke of a place where the sky touches the earth, a sacred spot where ancestors could commune with other realms. Reed and Thorne organized an expedition to the Amazon. The journey was arduous, fraught with dangers from the environment and the logistical challenges of transporting sensitive equipment, but the potential rewards outweighed the risks. This was an opportunity to study a transition site that had potentially been active for millennia, a place where the veil between realities might be permanently thinned. Upon reaching the circular clearing, they were immediately struck by the palpable sense of otherworldliness. The air was still, thick with the scent of damp earth and exotic flora, yet it hummed with that familiar, almost inaudible vibration. The vegetation within the clearing was different from the surrounding jungle. The leaves were larger, more vibrant, and some of the plants exhibited bioluminescent properties, casting a soft, ethereal glow in the twilight. In the center of the clearing, they found a structure unlike anything Reed had ever seen in her archaeological career. It was a low, circular platform, constructed from perfectly interlocking obsidian-like stones. The surface of the stones was incredibly smooth, almost polished, reflecting the ambient light with an oily sheen. Hieroglyphs, unlike any known human script, were intricately carved into the platform's surface, spiraling inwards towards a central point. Thorne's sensors immediately went haywire. The energy signatures emanating from the platform were off, the charts far more intense and stable than anything they had detected at Willow Creek. "This isn't a residual anchor point," Thorne exclaimed, his voice filled with a mixture of reverence and scientific excitement. "This is a gateway, an active, perhaps even controlled, interdimensional portal." Reed, tracing the strange hieroglyphs with her gloved finger, felt a profound sense of awe. "This suggests intelligence, Eris. Not a random, chaotic event, but something deliberately constructed, perhaps by the inhabitants of this reality, or by beings from the other side." Thorne carefully deployed a series of advanced probes onto the obsidian platform. The probes, designed to withstand extreme energetic environments, began to transmit data. The readings were astonishing. The platform was acting as a focal point, channeling and amplifying the dimensional energies. It was a marvel of unknown engineering, a bridge between worlds. As they analyzed the data, a new, unsettling possibility emerged. The hieroglyphs, after extensive analysis using advanced pattern recognition algorithms, began to reveal a recurring motif, a depiction of a large, circular object surrounded by smaller, orbiting bodies, strikingly similar to a solar system. But the central object wasn't a star. It was a swirling, vortex-like entity, emanating tendrils of energy. "It's a map," Reed whispered, her eyes wide with realization. These aren't just decorative symbols, they're astronomical charts. And this central vortex, it could represent the gateway itself, or perhaps the source of the energy that powers it. Thorne, meanwhile, had managed to decode a rudimentary pattern in the quantum fluctuations emanating from the platform. The frequency signatures are complex, but they seem to encode information. It's almost like a modulated signal, a broadcast of some kind. He worked feverishly, adjusting parameters, running algorithms, trying to filter out the noise and isolate the signal. Finally, a series of rhythmic pulses emerged from the cacophony of data. "It's a heartbeat," Thorne announced, his voice hushed. "A complex, multi-layered pulse. And it's not random. It's a sequence, a pattern. It's a communication." Reed felt a shiver run down her spine. They weren't just studying a vanished village, they were on the precipice of first contact. The implications were mind-boggling. If these were communications, who was sending them? And what were they trying to say? Thorne, with renewed vigor, began to hypothesize about the nature of the other side. If the Amazon platform was a controlled gateway, it suggested that the beings on the other side possessed advanced scientific and technological capabilities. They might not be alien in the traditional sense of extraterrestrial life, but rather extra-dimensional beings, inhabitants of an adjacent reality. He posited that the Willow Creek event and similar historical disappearances might not have been random, chaotic events, but rather unintended spillover from these more controlled, deliberate interactions. Perhaps during periods of heightened cosmic energy or geological instability, the dimensional barriers weakened to such an extent that even an uncontrolled energy surge from a distant gateway could cause a localized breach in a vulnerable area, like Willow Creek. This theory offered a terrifying, yet logical explanation for the apparent randomness of the disappearances. It wasn't that the inhabitants of Willow Creek were specifically targeted. They were merely unfortunate bystanders caught in the dimensional crossfire. Their research at the Amazon Gateway continued for months. They meticulously documented the energy signatures, the hieroglyphs, and the subtle communications. Thorne even managed to establish a rudimentary two-way communication link, sending carefully modulated signals back through the gateway, hoping for a response. The response, when it came, was not what they expected. Instead of a clear, coherent message, the gateway pulsed with a sudden, overwhelming surge of energy. The air crackled, and the ground vibrated violently. The bioluminescent plants in the clearing flared with an intense, blinding light. The intricate hieroglyphs on the obsidian platform began to glow with an inner luminescence, their patterns shifting and swirling. Then, a phenomenon unlike anything they had ever witnessed occurred. The very air above the platform began to warp and distort, not in a shimmering haze like Willow Creek, but in a kaleidoscope of impossible colors. It was as if the fabric of reality itself was being stretched and twisted, revealing the raw, unfiltered spectrum of another dimension. From within this vortex of color, a shape began to coalesce. It was indistinct at first, like a cloud of smoke, but it slowly solidified, taking on a form that was both alien and strangely familiar. It was bipedal, approximately 2 meters tall, with slender limbs and an elongated torso. Its skin seemed to shimmer with an iridescent quality, reflecting the impossible colors of the vortex. Its head was large, with piercing, luminous eyes that seemed to hold an ancient wisdom. It had no discernible mouth or nose, only smooth, elegant contours. Reed and Thorne stood frozen, a mixture of terror and utter fascination gripping them. This was it. First contact. Not with a distant galaxy, but with a reality separated by mere dimensions. The being extended a long, slender arm towards them. It moved with an ethereal grace, its every motion fluid and deliberate. It wasn't threatening, but rather curious. Then a voice, not heard through their ears, but resonating directly within their minds, echoed through the clearing. It was melodic, yet deep, carrying an immense sense of age and intelligence. "Greetings," Inhabitants of the adjacent reality, the voice resonated. We have observed your explorations. Your curiosity is admirable, and your scientific methodology, though nascent, is promising. Reed, her heart pounding, managed to ask, Who are you? The being seemed to tilt its head, a gesture of contemplation. We are the keepers of the threshold, the guardians of the dimensional pathways. We are the architects of the gateways you have discovered. Thorne, finding his voice, queried, The disappearances, Willow Creek, Prosperity Creek, were those your doing? The keeper's luminous eyes seemed to dim slightly, a flicker of something akin to regret, not directly. Those were unintended consequences, localized disruptions caused by periods of heightened interdimensional flux, amplified by your nascent technological experiments and by the natural thinning of the veil in those specific geographical locations. We strive for precision, but even our understanding of the multiverse is not absolute. So, the people of Willow Creek, where are they? Reed pressed, her voice urgent. They are safe, the keeper replied, its voice resonating with a calming assurance. They were transitioned to an adjacent reality, one that is stable and conducive to life. We observed their integration. They adapted, as life always does. They built new lives, in a world that, while different, offered them a new beginning. Can we bring them back? Thorne asked, a desperate hope in his voice. The keeper seemed to ponder this. The process is incredibly complex, and the risks are immense. To reverse a full-dimensional transition requires an immense expenditure of energy and a precise alignment of vibrational frequencies. It is not something we undertake lightly or without profound cause. But they were taken against their will, Reed argued, a plea in her voice. Free will, in the context of dimensional shifts, is a concept that transcends your current understanding. The keeper responded, its voice gentle but firm. Sometimes, events occur that are beyond the control of any single entity, even our own. We intervene when possible to guide and to mitigate harm. We are not gods but custodians. The keeper then conveyed a message of profound significance. Your reality is on the cusp of a new era of understanding. The barriers between dimensions are thinning, not just in isolated pockets, but on a cosmic scale. Your scientific advancements are inadvertently bringing you closer to the truth of the multiverse. But with this knowledge comes responsibility. The multiverse is vast and complex, filled with wonders and dangers that far exceed your current comprehension. We are here to observe and, when necessary, to guide, not to control, but to prevent catastrophic imbalances. The gateways are not just pathways, they are points of vulnerability, and there are other entities, other realities, that do not share our benevolent intentions. The keeper then presented them with a choice. You have glimpsed the truth. You can choose to remain within the confines of your current understanding, or you can choose to embrace the greater reality. If you choose the latter, we offer you our knowledge, our guidance to help your species navigate the complexities of the multiverse. But this path is fraught with challenges, and it will fundamentally alter your perception of everything you hold dear. Reed and Thorne looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. The choice was clear. The mysteries of Willow Creek had led them to this moment, to the precipice of a revelation that would redefine humanity's place in the cosmos. They couldn't turn back. We choose to embrace the greater reality, Reed stated, her voice firm and unwavering. Thorne nodded in agreement, a sense of destiny settling upon him. The keeper's luminous eyes seemed to brighten once more. Then the true journey begins. The mysteries you have uncovered are but the first whispers of a symphony of realities. Prepare yourselves, for the universe you thought you knew is far grander and far more terrifying than you could ever imagine. As the keeper began to fade back into the shimmering vortex of colors, a final resonant thought echoed in their minds. Willow Creek was merely the beginning. The veil is lifting, and the cosmos awaits. The vortex collapsed, and the clearing returned to its normal state. The bioluminescent plants dimming, the air losing its electric hum. Only the obsidian platform, now pulsing with a faint, steady light, remained as a tangible link to the extraordinary encounter. Reed and Thorne stood in silence for a long time, processing the magnitude of what had just transpired. Their understanding of the universe, of life, of everything, had been irrevocably altered. Willow Creek was no longer just a cold case. It was the genesis of a new scientific paradigm, a doorway to an unimaginable future. The task ahead was monumental. They had to assimilate this knowledge, to prepare humanity for the profound implications of a multidimensional reality. They had to bridge the gap between human science and the advanced understanding of the Keepers. They had to protect their world from the potential dangers of the multiverse, while simultaneously seeking out its wonders. The story of Willow Creek had begun with a disappearance, a tragedy shrouded in mystery. But it had evolved into something far grander, an odyssey of discovery, a testament to humanity's insatiable curiosity, and a prelude to an era where the boundaries of reality itself would be shattered. The lingering echo of a profound, inexplicable mystery had finally found its voice, and it spoke of a universe far more intricate and interconnected than anyone had ever dared to dream. And as we conclude this profound investigation, we're not left with questions, but with a new understanding, a new beginning. The journey into the unknown has just truly begun, and the secrets our world holds are merely reflections of the infinite possibilities that lie beyond the veil, waiting for us to explore. This deep dive into the unknown has not just sparked curiosity, but ignited a new quest. The community of mystery solvers has now become a community of cosmic explorers, ready to unravel the multiverse's most perplexing enigmas, hand in hand with the keepers of the threshold. The truth, like the shimmering distortion above the circular depression, is no longer just out of reach. It is here, within our grasp, a tantalizing glimpse into the vast, terrifying, and utterly magnificent possibilities that lie beyond the veil of our known reality. The exploration will continue, and you won't want to miss a single revelation.